I'm Shaun Haney, and this is RealAg on the Weekend. Let's get real and get connected with the week that was in Canadian agriculture. RealAg on the Weekend starts now. Welcome, everybody, to RealAg on the Weekend here on 650 CKOM and 980 CJME. Shaun Haney, your host, founder of RealAgriculture.com. It is great to be with you here today. Hope you're having yourselves a great week. I had a great week, like a really good week. Road warrior, extreme, but a lot of fun. Like, I really love this time of the year because it gives you an opportunity to really get a chance to, I do a lot of speeches this time of the year, and it allows me to get out and see the audience. And boy, I'll tell you what, I was in Regina on Wednesday, and there is a ton of fans of this show. Let me tell you, I heard it. You're loving it. It's great. Great feedback from so many of you that you're listening to this show. You love the fact there's agricultural programming, and a few of you say you hear my updates or commentaries that I do on Evan Bray's show when I'm a guest there. So I appreciate that you enjoy that as well. So like I said, I was a road warrior this week. I was in Cambridge, Ontario on Tuesday. Spoke to a bunch of soybean dealers. Then on Wednesday, I was in Regina for the Convergence Conference. Wow, great job by the Aberharts and Warren Bills. Fantastic work. That Convergence Conference was awesome. And then on Thursday night, then I was in Camrose, Alberta. Yeah, this is like 3 cities, 3 days, making it happen. I was in Camrose, Alberta, speaking at a Cargill Market Sense event. It had a great time. That was a really good time. Being an after-dinner speaker is fun. It's a little bit of a different vibe because everyone's like had a long day looking at charts and graphs and stuff like that, and you kind of get the opportunity to get shot out of a cannon. That's what somebody said to me about the Convergence Conference. It was like I was shot out of a cannon, and they thought I could go for like 2 or 3 hours. Well, yeah, like sometimes an hour is just not enough to get to everything. There's a lot happening in this industry, everybody. And when you host a radio show, you're kind of used to the talking thing, and it's just so exciting to see people's faces because I'm doing this show looking at a gray wall, and so when you get to do it in front of an audience and see the faces and see the reaction and see where some of the you got an opinion and you state it and you see kind of the reaction and how people what they think about that. I think it's a great opportunity. I love doing it, and I got a bunch of speeches that I still have to do here between now and seeding time. So this coming week I'm going to be in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm going to be at the National Farm Machinery Show. That's going to be a good time. I've been to that meeting. Oh man, I pretty much have been every year for over a decade, and that's always a good one. So love going to Louisville. Good bourbon. Yeah, got to hit the bourbon bar. And then the week after that, I'm down in Kansas City. Yeah, I'm going to be down at Top Producer Summit in Kansas City, and looking forward to that as well. And just, you know what, honestly, with all the trade issues between Canada and the U.S., I'm just doing everything I possibly can. I'm doing my part to really connect the dots and bring the two countries together and better understand what the concerns are. Like, I think under, because we do a lot of stuff at RealAgriculture.com. We have a pretty significant U.S. audience on our YouTube channel, for example. And so we're just trying to create as much content as we can that really tries to bring so that Americans can better understand the Canadian position on trade. But at the same time, I think there's things that Canada can learn on the U.S. position as well. So I don't know, call me optimistic or whatever, but just trying to bring those two sides together as much as we possibly can. Now, what's my reaction though? What's my reaction to what we saw this past like a week ago? Coming into this weekend, or the last weekend, it seemed like we were just being torn apart. It was a test of the Canadian will. There's no doubt about that. The reality is on the Monday, when Canada agreed to the things they agreed to, the $1.3 billion in border security, 10,000 troops at the border, they're going to have a fentanyl czar. Two of those things Canada had already agreed to. Canada, I think December 17th, sent out a press release saying they were going to put $1.3 million on the border, into the border security. So these are things that we agreed to. So there was a little bit of drama, a little bit of play to this. And yeah, it worked because it really tested Canadians. I thought Prime Minister Trudeau did a very good job last Saturday in making sure that Canada's understood that they take this very seriously, and this is a threat, and that Canada is going to have to respond. And they responded with some retaliatory tariff threats, $150 billion in retaliatory tariffs. I think that's like 30 or 40% of Canadian imports from the U.S. But yeah, interesting times. That's an understatement when it comes to the Canada-U.S. relationship. Indeed. So today on the show, okay, we're going to get some perspectives on this. We're going to get Matt Makens. He's going to talk about weather. We've got the weather forecast, talking about what we can expect on the Western Canadian prairies for the season ahead. I got to break it to you. I'll give you a bit of a sneak peek here. You're not going to like what he has to say, I don't think. Then we're also going to hear from Michael Harvey. He's the executive director at CAFTA. So we'll hear from Michael. He's got a ton of just career experience when it comes to international trade, and CAFTA represents all the exportable commodities, and like beef and pork and canola and wheat, commodities like that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index. So with all of this happening, how is it impacting farmer sentiment out there, like in terms of their ability to make money? Right? The markets are one thing, input prices are another. There's always concerns about the weather, but how are they feeling about things financially? Yeah, I had a great time in Regina, and it was very wintry, very wintry. This week Lindsay Smith from our team got to go to CattleCon, which is the big NCBA meeting, and yeah, she had nicer weather. I think it was like a 22 or 23 degrees. She took a picture I saw down by the pool at the hotel outside. We were not doing that in Regina. All I kept on seeing, we're at the Doubletree downtown there, and all I kept on seeing is people coming in with their toques and their gloves and their parkas saying, winter in Regina. Do we enjoy winter that much? Do we really? I'm not a winter person at all. I really don't like winter. I don't like cold. I'm willing to admit it, everybody. It doesn't make me un-Canadian. I don't like winter. But everybody says how much one of the things about being Canadian is we enjoy winter. We appreciate winter. No, we don't. Do we really? We sure complained about it a lot. This is all I heard about in Regina is how cold people were and the snow and the weather and the roads were terrible and all these kinds of things. So I just think it's, we think we like it. I'm not sure we do as much as, but at least you're going to get some sledding in, maybe some flatland sledding for some of you. I know in Camrose, they probably had enough snow to go, snowmobiling in the flatland on the prairies, on the pasture. Hopefully you're, having a good time if you're able to do that, and stay safe out there for sure. If you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms, and sign up for our newsletters, our free newsletters, realagriculture.com/subscribe. We only got an hour here on the radio show. You need to get our newsletters. They are free and they're in your inbox every morning. Our Western Canadian Update will keep you up to date on all things that are happening in agriculture. Let's take a break. When we come back, we got Matt Makens talking weather right after this. If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters, and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the RealAg community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
For balanced nutrition with micronutrients, the best answer is Wolf Trax DDP from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how wolf tracks can ensure nutrient availability through a crop's growth cycle, visit wolftrax.ca.
And welcome back to RealAg on the weekend. Well, what are the things that farmers probably are the most concerned about, at the same time the most optimistic about, and they know it really has an impact at the end of the day on the bottom line. And it's one of the things that most out of their control, and that's the weather. This week at CattleCon down in San Antonio, Texas, Lindsay Smith of Real Agriculture had a chance to catch up with one of our regular weather people we talk to at RealAgriculture.com, and that is Matt Makens of Makens Weather. Here's their conversation.
I would like some good news, but I don't know if I'm going to get it. What can you tell me? Let's start maybe in the West first. For this last half of winter, do we get good news?
Let's go back 1 year when I gave much of Canada very good news. Mm-hmm. And we'll sit there.
No,
we'll sit there. No,
we have to
okay,
continue.
we'll focus. Okay, things are going to be a little different this year. So very generally speaking, the pattern is flipped. So last year was El Nino. That's a bigger impactor for Western Canada than East. Now we're La Nina, and what does that mean? Okay, it means we get some cold. We felt that cold. But when we get into late spring, early summerish timeline, we're going to dry out faster. So the biggest impact we will feel this year for the next, say, 3 or 4 months is much colder. And in the growing season, we're going to dry out probably too fast in some cases.
Okay, that's not good news, especially for those areas that have really struggled with dryness over the last little while. Some of those areas, though, do have better snowpack now than perhaps they've had for the last while. Does that factor in? Will we hang on to that moisture?
La Nina has always classically been the snow producer for Canada, and it's doing that. It's producing snow. But most of that surplus snow is on the prairies. That ground is frozen solid. When we thaw, most of that water is going to just be runoff. Mountain-wise, we're not as good, and we need that for that stream flow. So it's optimistic for us to look out and be like, hey, we're in a pattern, we're getting snow, we're getting water on the property, but keep in mind, when we start to thaw off, where is that water going? And we have not thawed the ground out.
So staying in the West, certainly one of the conversations here at NCBA is certainly, rebuilding the U.S. cow herd, but Canada falls pretty much in line as well. One of the key factors is maintaining grass and having grass to put those cows on. So what do we have for an outlook on looking past maybe a dry spring?
The positive news here is that last year was pretty good, and we held on to some of that soil moisture. So that's going to give the early growth a bit of a boost, but we have to maintain that. Are we going to get as much June rainfall as we did last year? Probably not. It's going to be much more isolated. Same for July. So the ranges, it's going to absolutely be timing critical on the health of that grass, because it's not going to be as wet as we were last year. So from a grass perspective, expect conditions to be a bit more sluggish this year. From a forage perspective, can we hang on to some wheat and things? We'll see how the winter kill issues were for the barren ground. But that would be another issue, is that winter wheat should be good as long as it survived the cold. And that may be a better boost to the start of the season than, say, the early grasses.
Moving east, where I currently reside, we have differences, certainly. It definitely has felt like a more average winter as far as cold. Snowfall has been, well, I would say below average. That's my sort of anecdotal. Is that set to continue?
Overall, yes. Usually you're going to benefit in the east a little bit better in the spring. You'll get more frequent snows. It'll be a wetter snow variety. This late winter, spring is setting up to be quite mild. You're going to get shots of cold. Don't get me wrong. It's still winter. You're going to get cold times. But by and large, it's a milder pattern that you're in, which will imply perhaps some wetter snows, an earlier start to some greening, and some of that late season moisture. If you're warmer by a few degrees Celsius than average, a lot of that may be beneficial water to the east. So generally speaking, a wetter period for you and a milder period.
All right, so then let's talk about, we are, of course, very far south, but thinking about, the areas of the U.S. that correspond to our Canadian counterparts. Certainly we've been hearing some stories of what condition the winter wheat crop is in here. What is the outlook more generally for, say, the Midwest?
For the next several months, we're still going to have the issue, especially mid-February, and then cycling again sometime in mid-March, where we can have potential cold with winter kill issues on the wheat. Who knows what the last stuff did in January? I mean, we'll find out in March when it starts to perk up again. But we're not getting the snow to cover most of the Midwest to be that protective blanket for it. So the next 6 weeks or so, there's really, honestly, about 2 chances to get some cold down to these places. If they don't materialize, and the odds are not convincing that they will, we're in pretty decent shape. From a grass perspective, most of our feeding country did pretty well from some November and December moisture, so they'll have a good start. We will really have to start to see some concerns, say, mid-May into June, and then especially by July, because that'll be a time of year where a lot of moisture runs out for our feeding areas. It will have an impact on central and western corn, and some of those factors. As far as like a drought growth, if you're going to track drought, it's southwestern U.S. now, migrates to the Pacific Northwest, migrates into the Canadian prairies progressively as we go through the next 6 months.
Well, Matt, not the greatest news, but you're a weather person, so we can always hope you're wrong.
And most people usually do hope that I'm wrong and then point that out.
Yeah.
Quite frequently.
All right, Matt, thanks so much.
Yeah, you bet. My pleasure.
That was Matt Makens of Makens Weather. I'm hoping Matt's wrong too. Jeepers. Yes. Please, Matt, be wrong. Matt's a great guy, based out of Denver, Colorado. Love talking to Matt Makens, and we've got a ton of coverage at RealAgriculture.com of the CattleCon convention, and our cattle newsletter on Monday is going to be jam-packed. It is going to be loaded because Lindsay has got so much content coming on the beef side from this week's meeting, I should say. You can subscribe to our free e-newsletters, whether it's the Western Canadian update or it's the cattle update, maybe the machinery update that goes on Saturdays. You can do that by going to realagriculture.com/subscribe. Okay. Yeah. You know what? Based on some of the crop conditions and right now here, if you look out the window in different parts of Saskatchewan, you're going to see some snow on the ground. There was definitely some snow fell in Regina when I was there this week, but we did last year just was so disappointing because we had it in our hand. You get to about that middle of June and you see the crops that were out there, and then it was just pulled from us. It was stolen from us. It was almost like we had a 3-game lead in the Stanley Cup final and was ripped from us. We lost 4 in a row, and the other team wins the Stanley Cup. It was that kind of disappointment, that kind of feeling. We had a crop out there, and we were left with disappointment. Disappointment, everybody. So I hope Matt's wrong. Dry conditions would not be good for Saskatchewan, especially at the time here where the rancher can really take advantage. Could really take advantage of some of these prices. We need the best pasture conditions that we can get. So if you have any feedback on what you heard there, please send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. We've got more coming up here on Real Ag on the weekend on 650 CQM and 980 CJD. RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hefner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
For every acre, every row, every seed, precision wins. Every time. Only Seedmaster delivers unmatched accuracy for better yields and bigger profits. Seedmaster, driven by precision, leading the way in seeding innovation. Nailed it.
And we're back here on Real Ag on the weekend. Hope you're having yourselves a great day. Things are well. Everybody's happy. They're healthy. And really appreciate everybody tuning into the show. It was great being in Regina, like I said earlier this week, and seeing all the fans of this show. Great stuff. Really do appreciate it. And if you're enjoying it, I'll keep on doing it as long as 650 CQM and 980 CGME will allow me to do so. It has been a great association, a great relationship, and looking forward to the future and some exciting things we have in store for you, the audience. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hear from Michael Harvey. He is the managing director, or the executive director, I should say, of CAFTA. Now, CAFTA is the organization that represents all the exportable commodities. So this is things like beef, pork, canola, wheat, for example, okay? And all the things we're trying to ship out of the country. So not poultry, milk, cheese, not supply managed, non-supply managed commodities where exports are very important. CAFTA represents those organizations. They're members of it. Talk to Michael Harvey. He's got a career all over the world when it comes to trade, international law. I wanted to get his reaction to the 30-day reprieve, the breathing period that Canada and Mexico have been given here. And what does it mean for the future of tariffs and the trading relationship between Canada and the U.S.? Okay, so is it a win? Is this a win for Canada?
It's a reprieve. It's a lot better than how things were during the weekend, Shaun.
Okay, so I know from my talking to people and reading some of the U.S. news, the U.S. is definitely viewing it as a win, especially on the southern border. A lot of Canadians are pointing out, hey, these are things that we said we were going to do a month ago. I have a federal government press release back in December. I'm saying this $1.3 billion. Does any of that matter in this?
That's hard to say, Shaun. Really, it's very difficult to understand precisely the motives of the U.S. administration right now, and I think the role of a group like CAFTA is to try to bring back the discussion to rational trade policy. And rational trade policy is that for United States producers and consumers, as for Canadian producers and consumers, it is a bad idea to build up tariff barriers. The good thing is to tear down tariff barriers.
We've heard a lot of talk from President Trump and those around him on the trade file, a lot of talk about this structural change, bringing manufacturing back to the United States. A lot of times that was in reference to China. But one of the examples that is often given is, like, for example, Canadian auto manufacturing. There's also a real threat here on taking some of the agri-processing, meat packers and the meat production, or, canola processing, or, a crush facility, taking that back to North Dakota instead of having it in Manitoba. How worried are you about the potential structural change the U.S. is trying to execute here?
Well, the first thing I say is, yes, I'm worried. But then very quickly, I think when you're working through these things as a professional, you have to take that back to what can we do to face a situation that worries us? And what can we do right now is to work as closely as possible with U.S. counterparts, with U.S. producers, to help them understand how bad a decision like this would be for them, how the North American trading environment is good for them, is good for the United States, is good for United States producers, is good for United States consumers, and through the American political process, get back to a position of more realistic trade policy.
As you look across your membership, there's a lot of different commodities. Canada very reliant on trade with the United States, but also with sending goods and products around the world. Very trade reliant. Are there certain pieces of the membership that maybe is more exposed to this trade war this trade war battle and this tariff talk than some of the others?
Well, I'd say everyone is, because the United States is our biggest market. But also what is really interesting about the North American trading environment is that we produce things together, that we have these integrated supply chains, as you mentioned. So where things would be tremendously problematic would be to start unraveling some of those supply chains. So if you look at meat, where the live animal spends part of its life on one side of the border, part of its life on the other side of the border. If you look at feeds that go across the border, if you look at processed food, which is again made on both sides of the border. I mean, we really have a deeply integrated economy, and becoming less integrated would make the United States and Canada poorer.
Yeah. Because why? What ultimately happens in that scenario?
It would make everything less efficient. I mean, I think Canada's great strategic decision when we signed the free trade agreement with the United States was that 30 years ago now. And then NAFTA after that was that we moved towards a system where you do the economically rational thing. You get the lower cost input. You sell where you can get the best price. And the market means that the most efficient things take place. And if the most efficient things take place, then the producer will get more and the consumer will pay less, right? Moving away from that increases the cost for everybody.
Yeah. Michael, what in the next 30 days, what is an example of something that, your organization, your membership is doing to use this 30, even though what was negotiated here was mainly about the border, drugs and immigration, we know that some of the other issues are not going away. So what are you doing in this next 30 days?
So we have members who are speaking to American counterparts, again, to try to get these messages across in the United States. It's interesting. The United States political environment has been one over the last couple of weeks where business people are very concerned about speaking up in public in a way that is perceived as opposing President Trump. That makes sense. The election just took place. The president is new. He's in his period of strongest strength. He has a negotiating style, which is such that if you speak up against him, there can be consequences to that. But I've noticed in the last few days, people peeking their head up over the ledge and saying some things. The American Farm Bureau spoke up saying that there are negative effects to tariffs. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce spoke up saying there's negative effects to tariffs. The market spoke up yesterday. It wasn't great for the TSX, but it was a bad day for NASDAQ and the Dow Jones as well. And everybody says, I don't like prescribing motives to people, but everyone says that President Trump sees the stock market as one of his key performance indicators. And everything would indicate that the market doesn't like it when people are talking about tariffs. And I think we're seeing it again today with the Chinese response to the tariffs on them.
What you just said, I don't disagree with any of it. Where it leads me to, though, doesn't that showcase in the meantime the weakness of our traditional Team Canada approach? In the renegotiation of NAFTA to create the CUSMA and USMCA agreement, Canada worked hard at the state level, also in DC, talking to members of Congress, trying to push the narrative that free trade was good for not only Canada but also for the U.S. Are some of our U.S. friends on free trade going to be as willing to speak up, at least in public, for the benefits of free trade at this moment, or are we relying totally on backroom discussions from some of those people?
So, Shaun, I've been doing this kind of work, lobbying, government relations, negotiations in complex environments for around 30 years now. And you always have to regularly look at the strategic environment, try to figure out what the interests are of the people you're dealing with, try to figure out exactly where the decision-making process is. And you need to revisit that every now and again to adjust. It's obvious that right now we're adjusting. We're maybe adjusting on the fly. And that's fine. So let's adjust on the fly and figure out who has influence on President Trump, figure out what is affecting President Trump's decision-making process today, and then concentrate on that. But there's lots of different things, right? There's people. There are interest groups. I mentioned the market. That's rational economic decision-making. There's different things that influence the president. And yes, we have to concentrate on those things. It's obvious that we have to get in to MAGA land, as everybody says, or Trump land, however you want to call it, and get to those people. We also have to understand that things will change a bit over time. I mean, the U.S. political process is constant election mode, right? They're going to have midterms in 2 years. People are fundraising all the time. You constantly have to see what the president is reacting to. And let's be clear, it's good not to be too emotional about it, because President Trump has a communication style which can sort of lead you down a lot of rabbit holes that aren't really worth it. Let's be calm, manage things rationally, and respond rationally.
When I appeared on Ag Day yesterday in the U.S. on Monday morning, I was asked by Tyne Morgan what was the best case scenario for Canada, and what leading into this decision D-Day, these a couple conversations between the president and the prime minister, and I had said, maybe Canada agreeing to an early renegotiation of USMCA so that it could maybe be wrapped up before the midterms. Would maybe that's the best case. It seemed like yesterday was a better case, at least in the short term. How willing do you think Canada is going to be to agree to an early renegotiation potentially that President Trump seems to be pushing for?
I don't think early negotiation is a very problematic thing. Negotiation means talking, and we're always willing to talk. Really, the question is the terms of the negotiation. If moving negotiation forward means that we come to an agreement and then attention shifts to other things, I think that's fine. Dates aren't really the issue. The issue is what we come to as an agreement. If President Trump wants to renegotiate the agreement, treaties are always open to renegotiation, is the reality.
That was Michael Harvey. He is the executive director with CAFTA. I encourage you to go to RealAgriculture.com to check out the entire conversation that I had with Michael Harvey and where we go from here with this trading relationship. But we're going to take a break. We've got more coming up here on RealAg on the weekend on 650 CQM and 980 CGME.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Blackhawk EVO from New Farm is the next evolution in pre-seed burn-down herbicide. Powered by Duplasan, Blackhawk EVO delivers fast, flexible, and complete control of early germinating and winter annual broadleaf weeds. Find out more at newfarm.ca.
How I want to finish off the show here today is talking a little bit about the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index. Now, the Real Agri Studies, the market research arm of Real Agriculture, every quarter we ask Canadian farmers their feelings, perceptions, and sentiment around a number of different topics. And we're able to compare period to period. And we ask some other things as well, but this really gives us an opportunity to kind of dig in on how farmers feel about stuff. Because one of the things that I say all the time is that, lots of stakeholders hijack the farmer's opinion. Well, farmers believe this. Farmers don't believe that. Farmers won't like this. Farmers will like that. And a lot of times it's all based on anecdotes. It's all based on some of your personal experiences, maybe some of your personal biases. And it's not actually what farmers truly believe, or how do we know? Because we don't apply any sort of quantitative analysis to it. And so we started Real Agri Studies. My partner and I, Justin Funk, he's out of Guelph, great market researcher. He's got a family business, has been in market research and agriculture, and really kind of put our efforts together and combined our brains, so to speak, to really dive in and ask appropriate questions to farmers. So we actually can allow farmers to speak with one voice. Now, it's not necessarily a unified voice, but it's one voice. It's a perspective. And in this month, last month, January, we did our last intake. And there was 660 farmers that answered the study. Okay, so pretty darn significant. So what did they say? Okay, so when we look at current farm financial performance, so how do you feel about your farm financial performance today versus 12 months ago? We're seeing farmers they feel negatively about it. Okay, so the reality here is that this is a scale 0 to 200. 100 is neutral. And current farm financial performance is at an 83. So we're negative, but we're not super negative. We're just kind of below the neutral line. Now, future farm financial performance. How do you feel about your farm's finances 12 months from now versus today? It's about the same score. It's an 81. When we look at the question of, in the next 12 months, is agriculture in Canada going to have widespread good times or widespread bad times? The score is actually a 36, an all-time low. I think it sort of shows the black cloud, the overhang that exists right now when it comes to some of the things on tariffs and trade, Canada's role in the world. I think there's there's a big play on that's sort of a hangover on that issue specifically. So when we look at in the next 60 months, will we have widespread good times or bad times? Canadian farmers are a little bit better on that regard. They're at 72. Okay. So you can see the trend here. For the most part, farmers are feeling negative right now in their sentiment on a number of different issues that have to really do with their outlook, but also their farm finances. Is right now give you confidence in making your farm investments. So things like land, things like machinery, things like maybe it's bins or it's a shop, things like that. Investing in capital. Farmers had a 54 out of 200, so well below that neutral line. Even with interest rates coming down, farmers feeling less willing that right now is a good time to be investing capital. Now, does that mean they're not going to? No. The question is right now a good time? Doesn't mean they're not doing it. It's just you can invest capital at a bad time because you need to, right? So it just speaks to the friendliness of the environment. Now, something we've talked a lot about in the past is the direction of the markets. And boy, there's been, it has been a time where markets have been kind of all over the place. They have moved, they have shook, and they've been all over. But we've definitely seen in 2024 a real sloughing off in terms of commodity prices. Farmers have two concerns. Well, really three, and why there's one of them. We talked about weather earlier with Matt Makens. But if we look at what are you concerned about, number one and number two is commodity markets declining and input prices being sticky, or in some cases even rising, which is pushing farmers into negative margins. This is also the case in the United States. What's interesting is that farmers in the United States are much more optimistic about their current farm and future farm financial performance, the current and the future indicators. And in some cases, when it comes to future, comparing Canada to the U.S., it's double as optimistic. And that has to do with the change in government south of the border. U.S. farmers feel very strongly that this government in the U.S. right now is on their side, is going to lead to higher profitability. Now, does it right now? Absolutely not. The loss per acre in the U.S., USDA is forecasting pretty significant losses in the U.S. right now on a per acre basis. Like wheat's like 100, soybeans are 100, I think corn's 160 for example. So why are they optimistic? Well, we're seeing pretty big promises from President Trump to drop and get rid of some regulations. Now, the Trump administration is talking about dropping 10 regulations for every new regulation. That is fairly aggressive. Usually we talk about 2 to 1, but they're talking 10 to 1. So there's just sort of some insights into how farmers in Canada and the U.S. are viewing things right now, but definitely a negative sentiment in Canada. We're going to have more at RealAgriStudies.com. Hey, if you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@RealAgriculture.com, or of course you can call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg on the weekend.